is Tim Ryan. Welcome to the Tim and Jenn Show. I am sitting here with my amazing wife, best friend, business partner, and co-host.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Jimenez Ryan, and thank you everyone for tuning in today. It's been a week for us, or 11 days.
It's been, I sat there when COVID hit and all this, and I just want to be on the road speaking and traveling again. And the past 11 days, we went from Florida to Chicago for a night, to LA, to Mom's the next day for Easter, 2 days later to Mexico. Back to LA, then we went to Chicago, then we went to Ohio, then we went to Charlotte, North Carolina, then we went to Boston, then we went to New Hampshire, then we went back to Boston, and today we came back to Florida. Yeah.
Whew.
It's been crazy.
Wait. So
I want to talk about what it was like getting off the plane today.
Wait, let's talk about that in a minute. We always jump to conclusions, right? Like, I want to get into this part of it.
You do?
Yeah, it's a girl thing.
All right, go ahead.
But it's a math thing. So we were working the whole time, and we worked in Ohio, and I got up at 4 a.m. because we had to present at 8 o'clock in the morning. So I had to do hair and makeup. So I put on the whole layers, 5 layers of makeup. We have to wear masks as we leave the hotel at 6:30 in the morning. Then up until we walk on stage, we are wearing a mask. So we got to take off our mask for 2.5 hours, then put our mask back on. So this started at 4 o'clock. We finally got to our next destination at 12:30 at night, and I took off my makeup. Now, mind you, I had drag queen makeup on, and poor Tim doesn't care. I'll be like, babe, do I look okay? He's like, whatever, always, right? That day, I had my makeup still on, so my mask, I wore one of the paper masks, and he's like, babe, can I change your mask?
The whole thing was makeup.
And it's like, and then by the end of the day, I kept pulling the mask, and of course you can't take it off, and it was just a lot. And then we get here to Florida. I'm not kidding you.
I've never seen anything like
I walked off the plane. I'm the first one off the plane, and it was over 1,000 people in this one terminal
at Fort Lauderdale Airport.
I went into PTSD of holy COVID, and then fire emergency. If there was a fire,
it would have been catastrophic.
Chaotic. And
let me cut you off here. It's almost asinine because getting on the bus at Logan Airport, they have everyone social distancing, and then you're going through TSA and everyone's social distancing. Then you're on the plane, everyone's there, the plane's full. Then you get off the plane and it's a complete shit show. There are people everywhere. So I just don't understand the rationale on this. We're vaccinated, thank God. We had COVID, thank God we made it through. It almost killed us.
Yeah, but the PTSD of getting off that plane today for me freaks me out.
Yeah.
Because I'm also I'm a long hauler. I talk about this all the time, but I'm just trying to get this through people's heads as well as me completely coming into acceptance. It has been such an uncomfortable situation for me. And our strain was the highest strain you could get. So getting that was so traumatizing. Then the pain that I go through on a daily basis. And then seeing everyone it was like this. No one gave a crap. It was crazy. Anyways, I'm just grateful that we're home right now.
And then I get to listen to this 24/7, and I understand.
No, you don't, because I'm decompressing. We're ending our night with a bang, and then I'm taking the next 6 days off. I'm nothing.
Chilling.
I need to.
It's called self-care.
Yeah, we were doing interventions, and we were doing speaking, and we were just.
We did a 7-hour intervention. Now, I'll end with this because I want to get to our guests here. This family we've been working with for 5 weeks, and they finally, okay, come on in. The daughter has her own home who we're doing the intervention with, and they convince her to come to mom and dad's house. The daughter walks in at 9 a.m. yesterday, and the first person she sees is Jennifer. Well, it turns out the daughter's favorite movie is Blow. She's watched Beverly Hills Housewives, Sober House, Celebrity Rehab. She looks at Jen and goes, hey, I know you. And then it hit her. She goes,
why
are you in my parents' house? What are you doing here? And then she looks and sees me, and I'm like, hi, my name's Tim. We're an intervention. I'm an interventionist. My wife is. we're here to talk
Well,
with
and then
you.
I was like, the first thing that she's like, what are you doing at my house and at my parents' house? I just went, I know, must be really weird. You know, because like, how am I?
Absolutely.
You just got to be authentic and real. But I also want to talk about a few things that have happened lately in the media. And DMX just passed. And I said to you, right when they said he passed away, I said, this one hurts. And, you know, some of those, like, they always hurt. When I hear someone dies from addiction, it really takes a toll on me. But DMX is going to do celebrity rehab. So I did research on him. We were going to do this whole thing. He was coming in. I was standing at PRC waiting for him to come. He was in the car, and all of a sudden the marshals came, and he ended up going to prison because he crossed state lines. And it was Arizona. It was when he was in, you know, what was his name? The past guy in Arizona.
I have no idea what
we had to wear all the
old that asshole sheriff.
But the guy wanted help, and I know that a lot of other people, I know a few other people that try to help him, and actually he got sober a few times. And you know, the only thing I can say about people who have passed away and have had those stints of sobriety is at least they had those stints of sobriety and they had those moments of peace, you know. So yeah, I'm getting a little emotional.
Yeah, well, and I'm again with this because I want to get to our guest, but DMX was a devout Christian.
Mm-hmm.
He prayed with people. He talked about, you know, Jesus and this, and yeah, he had his struggles. And if you actually I saw a video of him, one of the most heart-wrenching videos when he was talking about, I think he was 13 or 14, and his mentor and the person he looked up to was the person that introduced him into crack cocaine.
Yeah.
And he's like, how could this person do that? And obviously, you know, he struggled his entire career, and how's the word? Prolific poet, entertainer, musician. But yeah, so addiction doesn't discriminate. But on that note, we got a really cool guest coming on here. And our friend Tom Arnold, when I told him who we were having on, he's like, I love that man. He's a dear friend of mine. Yeah, tell him I say hello. And I'm thinking, well, we got to get these two on the show together.
I was thinking about that when I was getting ready.
First off,
before you intro him, I was a little nervous. I'm a little geeked out over him. I'm not going to lie, because he's a badass. He's extremely intelligent.
He's a Midwesterner. He's from Madtown, USA.
He's a New York Times bestseller.
Don't know that. That's Madison, Wisconsin. Wisconsin is where my drinking career started, and we'll probably talk about that with the guest. He's a businessman. He's led a nationwide nonprofit. He's spoke to youth and businesses about substance abuse all over the country. He's a documentarian, he's an author, but he's a businessman, and he's actually working now for one of the treatment providers I absolutely believe in and love.
Yeah,
two of my children have been through this program, Rosecrance, based out of Rockford, Illinois. They're all over the Midwest. But with that, Tom Farley, how are you? Welcome to the show.
Hey, wow, what a buildup. That's amazing. Thank you. It was great to be here. Yeah, it's been a journey, man.
Hell yes, it has been a journey. And for the people that are listening that don't understand, you know, growing up in the Jennifer now, who's from Argentina, but then raised in California and his international supermodel, been all over the world. When we have done speaking events or visiting my kids or my parents in Illinois, whether we're in Wisconsin, Illinois, Iowa, Indiana, Ohio, she's like, do they just have red barns here?
Yeah, I count the barns.
And I'm like, well, so one place, Tom, I've never taken her to, and my parents only live 45 minutes away, is Lake Geneva, Wisconsin.
It's nice.
I'm dying to go.
The Hamptons of the Midwest. But you grew up and reside in Madison, Wisconsin. You grew up in the suburbs of Madison. Big family.
Just around the lake, yeah. Just on the lake, just on the other side of
you grew up in a beautiful house.
Beautiful house, beautiful.
Yeah, we had nice. Well, you know, we always had to get a bigger house every couple of years because Mom was always adding another kid. So
now, how many kids are in the Farley clan altogether? How many?
There were 5 of us. We have older sister, Barb, I think. And sorry, I always do that to her. And then because the 4 boys, then it was like me, Chris, Kevin and Johnny. And so it was chaos. It was just crazy. And my father just loved just whipping us into a frenzy. So,
So I don't think you said anything, or have you mentioned anything either of your brother who passed, Chris Farley.
Yeah.
And then you have Kevin, who's a comedian.
Yep, he's most of stand up now. He's got a lot of movies in his career. He just he got the heck out of LA a couple years ago. He's in New York, but he shifted coasts. But and then Johnny's still in Pasadena, and he does like he's got 3 kids now, so he's like trying to balance like the world on his shoulders. So, but he's literally the funniest of all of us.
Ah, really?
Yeah.
So, it's interesting. Well, when you're growing up with, I had an older brother, a little brother and sister, but I was the clown, but my little brother would always try to outdo me in things. And what was the dynamic in your, because you had a very loving home, your dad, like you said, would wind you guys up and just pull the cord and watch you go wild. Who was the dominant?
Well, we all, if you ask like all of our friends, like now, like growing up, all of my friends will say, "Oh, Tommy was the funniest," and all Kevin's friends will say, "Kevin, hands down." We were just all like in our groups, we were the centerpiece, and we just thrived on comedy and just making laughter, and but we always kind of held the line. Chris went over the line every time. So sometimes it made him like the funniest guy in the world. Other times it got him sent to his room for the afternoon. You didn't know where it was going to end up. And
obviously you're Chris's brother, and we will touch on it a little bit, but Chris didn't go to college saying I want to be a comedian, did he?
No, as a matter of fact, it was just, that was my parents' thing, is they didn't really care what our dreams and hopes were. They just said, you're going to college, and what do you do after that? It's up to you. But, start off at least with a college education. And Chris almost didn't make it. He got about 2 years in, and he went to Marquette, and it was challenging Jesuit school. And he just wasn't cut. He just, like, academics were like, no. And he was ready to go. And, that was his inkling of, people have been telling him since he was in the grade school that, he's going to be funny and you should do that. And now he's at Marquette, and he's like this close to Chicago and Second City. So he's like, I'm going to go. And but he was so raw. And he sat down with the dean of his college, and the dean said, Chris, your parents really want you to stay. So we got to figure some way for you to stay here and be engaged and like being at school. And he said, well, why don't you're kind of animated, which is an understatement, obviously. He said, why don't you go out for a play? And Chris was like, guys play sports. That's all we did growing up in the Midwest is sports. None of us did any plays. I think Kevin did one, his senior year, but as a joke. But so Chris goes, okay, I'll go. And he went for this play, and he talks about it later. He's just like, he's like, what is this? So like all the people on stage with me are like my teammates. The audience is like the people in the crowd applauding, and the adrenaline they got, and he actually was getting more affirmation from the crowd than he did like every 4 downs. So he realized, and I talk about this all the time, he realized that he wasn't an athlete that happened to be very funny, cracking up the team. He was a very gifted comedian that was very physical. Mm-hmm. Same thing. He just had to turn it around. He was in the wrong lane, and once that was it, that was all. That was it.
I like what you just said there. He was in the wrong lane, and you just had to turn it around.
Yeah, I feel that a lot of. Through all the avenues and lanes I've been in, I thought I needed to be this way, and then I end up here, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like I can't believe that I was in the wrong lane. And with a lot of things, I do got to tell you this. I have heard so much about you, your family, Chris. And Tim's obviously knows, and it's public. It's this knowledge that I actually dated somebody from Saturday Night Live for 3 years in my early 20s, from 1998 to 2001, and Chris Kattan.
Right,
and,
after
Chris had passed away. So I was on set every week at Saturday Night Live. And I mean, it was the greatest schooling for me ever. I mean, like from Will Ferrell, I was at his wedding, like Jimmy Fallon, Horatio Sands, the list goes on and on.
That was a funny, right after Chris, those guys were so funny.
Amazing. But everybody always talks about physical comedy, and Chris, I know Adam Sandler very quite well from back in the day, and just like and David Spade, and so like everyone always has talked about Chris, and being there, I'm like getting the goosebumps talking about this. Like being there right after he passed away, a year after, so was pretty surreal. And everyone talked about the physical comedy, and I know Chris Kattan was very physical, and it really took a toll on his body through the years. I saw him like probably like 8 years ago or 7 years ago, and I was like, oh my God, are you okay? And we've kept in touch, but you know, that is so, I mean, like he was so dedicated, Chris, your brother, to the art and craft of it.
He really committed. And that was, again, that's that sports background. There's a story that like years later, I think Chevy Chase came to the show and watched Chris do some pratfalls, and he said to Chris, he goes, like, what do you use? You know, what are you using to break your fall? Like, what do you to cushion your fall? And Chris goes, what? Like, what are you talking about? And Chevy goes, oh my God, you're actually like really hitting those, like smashing those tables. Yeah, that was Chris. He just like 100% commit.
He didn't use any cushion or anything, right? Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I remember hearing about this, and yeah.
What were you doing career-wise when your brother passed at the time?
I was I've always been a marketing guy, so I was working for mostly because I was living in New York, and so I was in the banking industry. So at that time I was working for KPMG.
Sure.
And in their marketing department, and it was, I'll tell you, I'll tell you the story. It's kind of, you know what. So I was living in Fairfield, Connecticut. I had 3 kids, wife, 3 kids, and I'm in Connecticut. And this was, no one had cell phones, and so I was at a friend of mine's office. He had done a lot of production work, and we were trying to figure out something that we could do that could incorporate Chris, and so we were in his office over a deli in Fairfield, and there's a buddy of mine from Georgetown, so we were just kind of hanging out, and he had like the TV in the next to his desk muted with CNN on, and we're talking, and I look over and I see Chris's building in Chicago, and then a couple clips of Chris and Spade, and I'm like, oh, what did he do now? And as soon as I said it, then the shot of a ambulance, and I'm like, and we turn it up, and that's how I learned. And I'm like, wait, what? And the guy goes, take the office. So I called home to Madison, and my dad picked up. And as soon as he picked up, I just like, whoa, wow! It just hit me. I don't remember driving. My house was probably 2 miles from where I was. I don't remember driving home through town. It was.
What? So, I'm sorry that that's how you had to find out about the passing of your brother. And with where things are, I've been to 150 funerals since my son passed away almost 6 years ago, and alcohol, suicide, drug related. But I can't tell you how many people have passed, and it gets around, and it's all over social media before the family members or loved ones even find out.
Yeah.
And what an awful way. Wow. I mean,
I'm so the one thing it did teach me, and I look at this all the time with families that are struck by this kind of tragedy, is especially a public one, because Chris was in entertainment, and I was used to that. I knew that, and I was in communications. I'm a PR person. I knew that, I didn't have to say anything.
Yeah.
And like, matter of fact, like, I think, Access Hollywood, like, called me, like, literally, like, half hour after I got home, because I had done an interview with them, like, and so they thought they had a connection. So can we come up and talk to you? I'm like, no. Like 3-4 phone calls. And I'm like, no, I'm not talking to anybody right now. And then at 11 o'clock at night, knock on the door, there's the whole film crew. I'm like, what, I'm not talking right now. And so when I see like these families that are just devastated and they feel like they have to talk to the press, I'm like, oh man, you don't have to do this.
No, you don't. You need to process and the shock, and then the waking up the next day and the reality, and okay, now we've got to plan a funeral and get all this done and write an obituary, and then 2 to 3 to 4 weeks later is when reality really sets in.
Yeah.
That's wow.
I'm really sorry.
But thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Let's flip out of that.
No. Well, I mean, the truth is though that this is the truth, and this is what's going on, and it's so much more enhanced now. I feel like, I'm so grateful I had that opportunity of getting sober privately. I'm glad that I knew how to somewhat hide my addiction, at least not publicly. Although if you look back and I tell the story, people look back and they're like, oh, now I can see it, but otherwise, like, I mean, you had it all in your face, you had your family was, your brother and you and the whole family was thrown into this after your brother died.
But prior to that though, Jen, is all the stints Chris goes to treatment, you hear about it on the entertainment shows or this, or Chris Farley sober again, Chris Farley relapsed again. So it's always in as it is still today,
How?
Go ahead.
How did you heal? Like, what did you do to really start healing? Because people say to me, oh, when my dad died suddenly, unexpectedly, and he was young, and they're like, it's going to get better. It's going to get better. My experience was it doesn't get better. It gets less. But when it hits me like it just happened 3 minutes ago. Yeah.
Well, I healed in two ways. One was that, we lost my dad died a year later.
Oh.
Another huge figure in our family. And I talk about this all the time. I said, over the last 20 years, like, I miss my dad, probably more than Chris, but that seems like it's so long ago, because my grief with my dad is like everyone else's grief. After 6 months, no one asks you anymore. Mm-hmm. That's just you now. That's just you. And you got to carry that and you got to do that. But with Chris, it's almost like I say it's a blessing, because not a day goes by, somebody doesn't, either I'm so sorry for your loss, or, oh my God, I got a funny story. And he's as alive as he ever was. So that has helped me a lot, just being able to talk about and keep him alive, and then doing the things that I did with the foundation, and then writing the book. That was the other thing, is like I was the older brother. If I wrote the book, my memories, it would not have been as effective, because, for years I just thought Chris was just pushing my buttons. Just like, why? I would tell my friends, stop laughing at him. It's not funny what he just did, even though it was hysterical. So the book when I wrote the book, we did it through interviews of people that we grew up with, that we went to camp with, that Chris went to college with in Second City and then SNL and LA. And it's, through all these different people and how they interacted and intersected with Chris, they told their version of Chris, and it came out the same, that was Chris. I looked at him like, yeah, they knew this kid. And maybe I didn't, but I say, like, I have a better relationship with my little brother since writing the book than I ever did when he was alive, because I'm able to give up on some, let loose, some things, and forgive him on some things, and remember the good stuff, and remember and see, a different depth to him than I could ever see. It's just all wonderful stuff. And, you know, I kind of wish he wasn't so saintly, you know, kind of.
You know, you've really got my wheel spinning here, because we have some similarities in the sense of my son died, and when he died, his best friend Adam moved in with me. He was was just getting sober, lived with me. 10 months later, I got him trained up to work for a treatment center. We're opening in Naperville. 5 months later, he came back. 2 weeks later, I find him dead from an overdose. So I basically lost two of my sons, and my family, we raised Adam since he was 12. I lost those, but what you said about the stories, I still get messages today. You might not know me, but your son, Nick, we were friends, or I went to treatment, or this and that. And the stories you keep hearing, and it keeps it alive. See, I celebrate the time my son was on this planet, as you do. You celebrate the day, the time Chris was here, and all the things he did versus living through the day he died. And you've taken that, and for years, you were out speaking and giving a message of hope, and still are, to youth, to all sorts of
people. But I think you did, like, you just said something first of all about your brother being, like, everyone thinking he was a saint. Like, it's so funny that when we come clean about our lives, or we're just really, you know, there's no hiding who we are. People are like, oh, they're such a good person. Like, they're a saint. It's like, no, we're not saints. We're just honest, right? Like,
right. Well, and I'll describe it this way. I mean, I remember just when I described Chris's struggles and how I viewed him. I mean, there were so many times, Chris, all he wanted was to bring joy and laughter and make people laugh. That's all he wanted to do. And it wasn't just, I don't care about you laughing at my stuff. I want you to make me laugh. And it was just, he just loved that whole stuff. But when he was drinking, there was that moment in the night where I would see it in bars in Wisconsin, just Chris, you know, people just walking away, shaking their head like, you know, that guy was, what a dick. And I'm like, yeah, right?
Yeah.
See?
Now you see it.
What he did to me. Yeah. And so, and I think Chris waking up the next morning knowing he did that, I think kind of really fed his addictions. But all these years later, I can leave all of those things, whether it was to you know focused on me or the stuff he said, you know, in other relationships. That's his addiction. You know, that wasn't him. And so if I can separate those two things, then, you know, and I can really concentrate on who Chris really was or wanted to be, or was deep down inside and maybe couldn't show as much as he wanted to in life. I'll talk about that all day long.
That's amazing. Now, I want to ask you a little bit more in depth of some things. So in the midst of all that with your brother, you are in recovery, right? Yes,
I am now.
Were you then?
No, you know, it's interesting. You know, so I started the Chris Farley Foundation. I was going into schools and I was doing some really cool stuff with improv, teaching them how to create ensembles and communicate better and not have peer pressure. And it was really fun. And so, I was still kind of drinking. I remember going to, one marriage counselor, and my wife is ticking off all my ex-wife, ticking off all the things that I did. And he's like, well, let me get this straight. You're a communications professional, and your wife is telling you can't communicate with your family very well. And you run also a prevention, a substance abuse prevention foundation, and you've got, an alcohol issue. It's like, we got some work. And I'm like, oh, no, yeah, if you put it that way, I guess I do. So, my kids were really young at the time, and I said, I don't want them growing up like this. I don't want my wife to have to, deal with, the stuff that comes with it, and I could see it coming. So I just stopped. I said, I'm not going to have my kids, so that for 5 years, I was sober, and my kids never saw me drink, and then there was, because I was just dry, I would like, well, one Guinness on St. Patrick's Day, what's that going to do?
What a good Irishman does.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm supposed to, right? So I would do that. And then I was just like, crazy. And then I was back like a champ. I would have like a couple years. And then I'm like, okay. Then I moved back to Wisconsin with my family. I'm like, giving another shot here because this was this could really, now I'm in with professionals. So, so I tried it again. And again, I went for like 4 or 5 years. And then I'm, a lot of stress and, divorce and stuff like that. And so I got my kids through high school and they saw 2 big bouts of sobriety with me, but it just, then I was back at it. Got maybe 10 years ago, got a DWI, lost a job. And I'm like, really at this age, are you going to do this? Like how, and then I would just be driving around with this panic, I would like, there was like a summer where I would go like, or if I leave the bar right now, I can make it home, which is, it's already too late. But I would get home and I'm like, it's only 9:30. So the cabinet would be open. And there was like a summer where I would wake up and like grabbing the Tylenol. I'm like, okay, this isn't, I don't know what to do. I can't stay sober. And then I said, I saw a good friend of mine, he's a musician who I really, I saw him he was at a brewery. He was playing on a Sunday. I'm sitting with a couple of beers. I knew he was been sober for a couple of years. And I had, drinking beers and having to talk with him. I'm like, God, this guy's doing it, man. He's playing his, he's playing his gigs and he's staying sober. He's in a brewery doing a gig. And I'm like, and I remember that it was just before Halloween, October 29th. And I'm like, I woke up the next morning. I'm like, that's it. I'm done. So I got 4 months into it, and I was talking to a really good friend of mine who now works with me at Rosecrance. We merged with our Madison group called Connections Counseling, and I had spoken with their kids groups for years. And the woman that ran it, Shelley Dutch, a good friend of mine, she said, I told her I was very proud. I'm like, I haven't had a drink in 4 months. She goes, that's great. She goes, we haven't connected. Let's have coffee. And I'm like, I'd love to have coffee with you. I'm like, where do you want to go? She goes, why don't you meet me Saturday morning, 9:00, the basement of the Presbyterian Church? I go, oh, you are good. Okay. So I walked in and like, because I love this woman. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to do this for you. And for me, I'm like, I'm going to do this. And I'm like, I'd done a couple of AA meetings before. I'm like, I didn't really get, and like, I don't know, it was the right time. And I'm like, I'd never looked back. It was just, that was 3 years ago. And it's just been, and it's been great. I loved my home group. And then COVID hit, and now I'm hitting like, places, meetings in Illinois and stuff. Now I got this Wednesday night group I talked to in Illinois that I'm like, our conversation last Wednesday was like, what's going to happen when are we going to like split the gang up? I'm like, no, we got to keep this going. It's just been wonderful. So
isn't it amazing? Like I've been trying to get sober since I was 21, in my 40s. And so like I would be dry. I mean, I've been dry sober, right? And then I would try to just do it on my own.
What a lot of work.
So much work. And I always say, like, I don't know what's worse, someone who's out there using or someone who's dry, and I've been both. I would probably say someone who's dry. For me, my experience is, for me, being dry, the worst place, because I become bitter. And I'm like, that's the worst place to get. Like, if I'm bitter, we're in trouble. And going back in, though, like the fact that you kept trying, though, and you'd have all these
whether you did it on your own or not.
I mean, my hat off, because you've had a lot of time in between during these stints.
But what wasn't changing was my thinking, and me, and like, my attitude toward me. I'm like, all that stuff. I'm like, that was the struggle. That's what I didn't get. And all of a sudden, I'm in the program, like, we're not, being sober is kind of part of the deal, but we're not really. We're working on other stuff. Like, what makes you think this stuff? What and like for instance, like I'm a big Catholic, and I've been raised Catholic. I go to church like that. That's my thing. And so I remember like a couple of years, way back, I would go into I tried AA and like, they were talking about higher power and like, trees are my heart. I'm like, yeah, what are you talking about? And now I'm like going in, I'm like, I get it. Okay. Yeah, that's cool. And I'm like, because it has nothing to do with my faith. It has nothing to do. And like, I didn't get that at first. And I'm like, okay, I can have that. But like, nah, this is something really different.
The best advice I heard is, Tom, the best advice I can give you is don't take any advice from the last person you had to drink with. That's yourself. And it took me going to prison the second time to thank God to get in a therapeutic community and have a gang chief cellmate that said, I do recovery in this cell. Because if you're not doing recovery, you're not coming in here. And all we did was AA big book, the NA basic text. I read 300 books. We wrote the business plan for a couple nonprofits. All I did was recovery. But I started to build that foundation and got out and built it. But now meeting Jennifer and falling in love with her, she's given me all these other things, therapy, and really expanded my view. But one thing I've learned too is to say no and not to, like Tom, because I would do anything for anyone, run the nonprofit, take this call, do this, speak here, do this. Yeah, I'll do this for free. I'll do this. I'll jump on this plane. And I was ready to implode because I had no
people pleasing, and then the codependency that I suffer from. I do got to say this. You touched on something that is so important, at least for me, is that I come from grew up, Christian, and Jesus was my God was a very punishing God. God bless my grandmother. She did the best she could. But like I'd see at 5 years old, I'd see videos of like, these kids listen to rock and roll and they literally burn and go to hell. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to hell. It was just terrible. Right. But like, I got baptized because I didn't want to go to hell. And then, I got thrown in the entertainment world and I was going to hell. Like my grandmother would be like, you're working with the devil. Like, and I'm like, but I got thrown into this. And then finally my mom said to her one day, like, well, the entertainment industry also needs God, and so like my concept of God was so like, I couldn't pray myself to get sober enough. Like, I mean, I did enough, all that, and none of that worked. Like, and then all of a sudden I get sober and I realized it was a spiritual program and my faith is different than my spirituality in that sense. I mean, and
this has nothing, this getting sober has nothing to do with religion.
My sponsor's a priestess, people would come over and they'd bow down and like, she'll tell you, like I'd walk in there, I'd be sitting there and people would come in, they'd do their bowing and I'd be like, in the blood of Jesus Christ, please cover me. Like, and they're laughing at me, right? And they're just talking about spirituality. And it's so true, that your faith is different than how you can see the trees now, and
what other people think.
Yeah. And the codependency that you're just talking about and people pleasing. And I was addicted to drama. And recently, especially this last week, I said to Tim, I don't think this is working out very well for me, like traveling as much all in 1 week. You're right. Like, cause it's chaotic. So like I used to be addicted to chaos and I'm realizing I'm growing finally and that it's not working for me. It's kind of like these little moments that are allowing me to see things clearly.
Well, and that's the last part is, that I figured out in recovery is, I got to be honest, I started the Chris Farley Foundation really, part of I wanted to like go into schools and tell kids that, connected to the name, like don't go down the same road because they were fans. But really it was just after, it was 9/11, economy was bad. I'm like, okay, maybe I can really, if I build a brand, I can show people what a great marketing guy I was. So I really kind of went into it with this, I'm going to build this foundation off of Chris's name and it's going to be this brand. And I did, I had it was a great brand. But and I did that for a long time. I went out and spoke, and I was talking about somebody else's recovery. And once I got in recovery, I started to look at where am I going to go from here. I realized that part of my recovery is I got to take my ego out of it. My ego has been driving me. My ego is so connected to my addictive brain and my decision making that. So like when I took this at Rosecrance, some people were like going, well, you really, you want, that's kind of low bar for you. And I'm like, it's what I need to do. It's what I know I can do. It's what I want to do. I know it can make a difference. What do I care? I'm not building a career anymore. I'm not building wealth anymore. I want to do what I want to. I want to help people, and that's and take my ego out of it. And once I did that,
well, ego, edging got out, and thank you for being honest with that and transparent, because when I started my nonprofit, Amana Recovery Foundation, people thought I started it because my kid died. I had already started it, but it got to the point to where 5 weeks ago, my board, we voted to dissolve it because it ran its course for 6.5 years. We helped a lot of people. It was different when I was living in Naperville and all over Northern Illinois. I just don't have the time to do it. My wife and I are doing a podcast now and building our careers, and people are like, well, you've got to do it. You know what? No, I don't. I don't need to answer phones 24/7 and all this.
Sorry.
Well, I'm just saying, you found your right lane.
Yeah, I love that. I love that.
That should be the title of your next book.
Yeah, I was gonna like pick on one of my other brothers and write one on them, but
well, you could.
I think it's really. It's funny. I think it's so awesome of you to be so transparent, because we do one thing, right? And we don't really we're like, okay, no, I'm not going to talk about it. But like, you talk so openly about it. And I'm sure there's so much more depth and weight to you now when you tell your story, or you go into schools, or you.
Are you doing schools anymore, or what?
Yeah, a little bit. I was literally just, that was my first talk about, trips. It was my first trip in a year. I went up to St. Cloud State last week. And it was my first speak. It was weird. It was a hybrid, virtual, what some people there. So I'm looking at this sparse crowd masked up, and but it was great. And this school, I went up there because they have an actual recovery group, like they have, the debate group, it's school sanctioned recovery program. And it was really cool. And they do a great job. So it was fun going up there, but the travel was kind of like, I was worried about that.
So what was it like, though, talking about your recovery journey now versus your brother's recovery?
Well, first of all, I was just talking, it was almost kind of like historical. This is how it happened. But now I'm talking about I'm talking about all the, stuff that's meaningful for me. For instance, like what the difference is, like the difference for me that made all the difference, that I cling to two parts of the program that I cling to more than anything is acceptance. I never talked about acceptance. I didn't know what, Chris's acceptance thing was. I can talk about it now, talk about it all the time. And the other thing was rigorous honesty. And that's what we're talking about here. I mean, I crafted a whole life of, I'm a marketing guy. I mean, my story it was all baloney. It was all, and I just, it was my outward, I wanted everyone to see what I was crafting for them. And now I'm like, this is what, this is it.
This is who I am.
It's interesting. In my book, Alec Baldwin said one thing about Chris, and I took it to heart. Is he said there's two kind of actors. There's one kind of actor that puts on all the cloaks. They figure it out and they pile it on, and here's their characters by piling on all these traits or things and this, and that becomes their character. They become this thing that they've kind of created. The other one are the people that take the cloaks right off and they lay it open, and they are as raw as you can be. And said that's what Chris was. Alex said, Chris was that kind of guy. He was just going to lay it all up there, leave it all on the stage, and I'm like, yeah, that's a much better way to. I mean, both are. It's a business, but I want to live my life that way. Just like here it is.
True, authentic,
vulnerable. I love leaving it all.
Yep.
No regrets. By telling.
Then I got a chance. Then I got that leaves me the opportunity to now I can decide, do I like this guy? Because what I was creating, what I knew was wrong. So how could I like that this persona that I've created that I know is false. It's not authentic. So I got a chance to like really, like, okay, I can live with this guy. I like that.
Well, and you're saying this, Tom, and I will attribute a lot of this to you working the program and having a sponsor and sponsoring other people and being in the solution. And I sit back for all the people that knock the program or whatever and say, you don't even need to be in recovery to work this program. And if you apply these 12 steps to your life, you're going to have such a better life. You're going to be an honest person. You're going to live with integrity. The mask is going to come off. You talk about the mask syndrome a lot.
Well, I think that you also have to have people around you that says, just let it all out. Tell your truth. Because I needed that. I can go through the steps, but I need people to guide me saying, tell your truth. Have no shame in it. I remember I was on CNN after Sober House came out. I had lost like 40, 60 pounds and they were doing a weight loss thing. And Brooke Baldwin and I, Robin Quivers were on and somebody else. And they were talking about losing weight. And I was like, yeah, I lost, chunk of change or a chunk of weight. And then they're like, yeah, and then, I was eating, and I was like, well, I have eating disorders. And they're like, what? I'm like, yeah, modeling all, and I started talking about my truth. Because the program, the people, not the program, but the people in the, like 46 in Crenshaw, where I got sober, where I got rebirth, they were like, tell on yourself. So I applied that in all my affairs. And all of a sudden, everyone's like, oh my God, you're telling the truth. And, they go into like, you're so amazing because you do this. Now, I'm not amazing. Like, I'm not a saint. I'm not amazing. Like, I've done a lot of dark things and a lot of bad things. But I tell on myself because I don't want to have shame in it. Now, maybe it'll allow someone else to connect. But what I thought you wanted me to be is how I lived my life. I no longer live my life like that. And that's what it sounds like you're saying. Like this whole conception of who you
thought you were,
or you wanted people to believe you were that. But like it wasn't that, but
I've had to live, 20 plus years with, this guy over my shoulder, and so, the Chris Farley brother thing is like, they want to, everyone wants to just throw me in that. So, and pack me in and I'm still introduced to, this is Chris Farley's brother. I'm like,
so Tom, prior to Jen and I were talking prior to getting you on the show here. And I said, one thing I want to ask Tom, and she's like, well, I don't know. I mean, it's tough living in your brother's shadow in regards. And yes, you did phenomenal things and did the nonprofit and it helped, but you're still Chris Farley's brother. When, you went to a phenomenal university, not many people, I was a technology recruiter for 23 years. Only the best of the best go to companies like KPMG. Even if you're a secretary, you're vetted, you've had a phenomenal career. You've done phenomenal things, but to me, you're Tom Farley. You're not Chris Farley's brother, And I like that authenticity. And I'm so grateful that you've grasped this shit called recovery with this cool thing called the steps. Because Jennifer says, when I met Jen and all this, she said, look, the second half of my life, I want to be happy. I want to enjoy. I chose to be happy. We chose to be together, and life's good. And I never thought at 52 my life would be so amazing right now. But it all goes back to my foundation of putting my hand up and getting out of my way.
But there's a thing that you do though that I've said, like, babe, when you talk about this stuff or that he doesn't. He's discovering right now, right? Like I'm still discovering. So like he gets into this raw, sensitive, like authentic place that's even deeper than what his story has been, and I'm like, oh my God, there's your power. Like that's like, it's amazing. And like, it sounds like that's what you're doing. I mean, I could see that that's what you're doing. And you've incorporated all these things and now you're in your lane.
And what?
Now you're in your lane.
Yeah, totally.
And you're actually super fucking funny. Excuse my language, but I think you're so, I'm like, there's no way you're not like a comedian. And you're extremely intelligent. And you're sober. And like sobriety, people think, I'm too smart for this. Like, and that must have been a big thing for you in your early sobriety. Like, not you being too smart for your own good.
Well, that's, it's funny. Like, I, for the last 20 years, living under the shadow and like, and then drinking on top of it, and having to deal with that, it was so much easier for me to just get drunk, play the fool, let everyone laugh. Everyone loves me. Everyone loves me. Oh my God. I was, as Chris always used to say, no one fears the clown. Nothing to fear here. And I get it. I took that. It was an easy route. And I remember like interviewing for another recovery group, and they said, "Tell us something about you that no one else knows." And I said, "I'm actually pretty freaking smart." And they're like, "Well, yeah." I'm like, "No, you didn't go there first. Yeah. I mean, I went to Georgetown. Yeah. I mean, it's
You're very intelligent,
but I'm not. I miss that kind of atmosphere and environment, so I'm glad I still have my college buddies that we connect. And
so tell me about this venture with Rosecrance here, because as you mentioned, there's a lot of things you could still be doing and chasing all this money and more movies and write books and you could ride that Chris Farley train, and you're choosing not to. You're choosing to work for one of the largest, oldest treatment providers in the United States of America that we have the utmost respect for. Jenn did a big speaking event for them. I did a podcast with them. Great program. What's your role at Rosecrance? What are you doing for them?
So I'm a community relations. So they were, when they bought this place in Madison, this outpatient group, they said, well, we need somebody up in, Madison, because, Madison, they look at, Illinois. Illinois. So they wanted somebody to be the person that's connecting to all the other partner agencies and the pipelines and the schools and the doctors and the lawyers and the other treatment facilities and so I'm that person in Wisconsin that's going around, and my job is to make sure that people get referred into Rosecrance that can get help there, and the people that we can't help, that I find where they can go in Wisconsin. It's just, that's what I love about this industry is, I come from a banking world where, the next bank, down the street, like, oh yeah, we do business with them, but like, no, they're the enemy. And here in recovery, it's like, no, there's somebody that needs help. We're going to find them help. And it's hard enough for a family to find, a place for their loved one, and to be a part of that group and to be a part of an industry that has that mission of like, let's get these people where they can get the best help. It's a great feeling.
Especially with everything you've been through, your family's been through, where your journey's at now, man, what a blessing. That is a gift that you get to say, yes, I want to spend the next 10 or whatever, 15, 20 years doing this. And you can still go do some speaking, and then we'll drag you next time. We're going to do some interventions. We'll take you with.
Well, that's kind of, my bucket list. That's what I really want to do. I did a lot of work this over COVID with Hazelton, doing webinars talking about, it was myself talking about my experiences. I had an interventionist. Do you know David Marion?
Sure.
David and I, he's just
I just talked to him a week and a half ago.
The best. He's the best. And so, and so we would go out and we would talk, and so I would talk about like, my experience and then going off, of course, and like how our interventions just did not go well in our family. And I would take over. That was great. So, so we did that. And, we were talking about like kind of what's coming, this whole last year, we were talking about, two things we were talking about. Like, there's a lot of people that are going to be leaving COVID with behaviors that they didn't have when they started COVID. And so, there's just this storm coming. And I also talked about, one of the key phrases that we're all, it's a badge of honor to be a first responder. And I would tell people like I was with Chris, and my family and my parents were first responders for Chris. And you know what I'm talking about. It's like, look, keep an eye out. There are people struggling now. Look around, look at your friends, look at your family, be that first responder, because it's coming.
I've seen it everywhere. So COVID hits last year, lockdown happens. I'm running around my house really quick. I'll do this really fast. I'm running around the house and a week into it, and I run in the room and Tim's reading something. I'm like, babe. And he's like, yeah. He looks up and I'm like, babe, I think my alcoholism is going to be affected with this lockdown. I don't even know. And then he's like, okay. And I'm like, no. And my mental health is about to be affected. I could feel it. I'm like, we're about to have a pandemic within a pandemic. And he was like, he ran with it. So cut to, during COVID, I'm like, I kept saying, I'm like, this is not going to go well, like afterwards. And then I'm like, I think something's wrong with me. And we didn't know about the long haulers yet. And I'm like, babe. And he thought I was being dramatic at first. And then we see this thing where he, on 60 Minutes, and he was like, he starts crying, like, it was all
the after effects. And we still both have that.
But then I'm like, I started getting really like weird I wouldn't have like a full day of depression, which I used to prior to meeting Tim. I would have like day 3 and I'd be like, oh, this is depression. But I had the tools, right? And I tell on myself with my group of people and my doctors and stuff. And since I've been with Tim, I haven't had a full day of depression because I found connection and purpose, right? Like, and so he doesn't have mental health issues, but I'll explain to him, this isn't about you right now, fact or fiction, but after COVID, I'm seeing it everywhere.
Well, just the other day.
Everywhere. People affected.
But what did we just read or hear?
People who've gotten COVID.
Who have had COVID.
1 out of every 3 people who've had COVID will be dealing with mental health, substance abuse.
Well, it's depression, mental health, suicidal ideations, and substance abuse. 1 out of 3 people. Now look at this, COVID hit, suicides are up 1,000%, mental health calls are up 850%, alcohol sales are up 250%, opiate overdoses nationwide are up 34%.
And for anyone who doesn't believe this, like, it's not like I'm trying to make something out of this. Like, and I'm not trying to be like, this is it. That's why this is it. This is a fact. Like, I'm seeing it. I'm witnessing it. We're in homes of people. Like, we're getting calls daily. It's all over. It's around all over. This is not like a hoax.
And I think it's just phenomenal that you're in this position now with your 3 years, with your knowledge, with Rosecrance, with people like Dave in your corner. Dave is a badass, and get out and do some interventions with him. Sit second chair, learn. We'll be glad.
That's that's my goal.
Because it's going to be, your services are going to be needed, and I'm so blessed that you're where you're at right now, and it's crazy how
I'm like, I want you to come with us now.
Yeah, I know.
Let's roll. Well, I can
know.
tell you one thing. Thank God we got our vaccines. Did you get yours yet? Or you?
Yeah. I got my second one yesterday, and today I was like, what's today going to be like? I was fine. I have done, but like my body was like, yeah, whatever, bring it on.
I've had a gallon of scotch, and get it. But the good thing is things are going to start opening up, especially in the Midwest, and we'll be coming in and.
We need you.
We need some things. We need to do some things.
Recovery needs you. Like, you are so needed and wanted.
Well, it's and the kind of the thinking, the academic part of me is like, I've always been, going out and getting on a stage, and literally I can get on stage, and I've got my brothers we got that Farley thing. I'm fearless, and that's a rare talent to get out on stage. But I was just very motivational. I said that, great stuff, and people loved it. But, the back of my mind, I'm like going, yeah, but you didn't tell them anything. And so like being connected with Rosecrance now gives me that, that clinical knowledge that I never had before. And what I've been like dying for, because that's the other side of the brain for me. I'm like, I need both. And so that's what I'm really excited about. Now I've got, people feeding me the real answers.
Yeah. So that it's good too. Matt Quinn and Lisa Prim and Janice Waddell, and these people have just surrounded. I can remember Matt Quinn. He's clinician by trade, and he does business development, clinical outreach in Illinois. And he comes to meet me, and he's like, "I'm hearing about you and this and that." Matt's one of my dearest friends today, and we've done a ton of speaking events together. And
I just listened to the podcast you guys did. Yeah.
Love the program, but Tom, if people want to find you and follow you or contact you, how do they do that?
I've got stalkers every day. So I do have I do love my social media. So, I do I try to put some Instagram stuff up there. Mad Farley. Yeah, it's for Madison.
Sure.
As far as you know, could be. So Mad Farley is my kind of handle that I use for Twitter and Instagram and Facebook is,
You got a new follower. Jen's following you. Amazing.
I followed you last week.
Oh, so I think I see that. I don't know. I thought
Tom, if she goes and checks and you're not following her, she's gonna be like, I can't believe this.
I would not. That's not.
We had him on the podcast. I'm following him, and he's not following me.
Do not even listen to him.
I did.
We definitely have to get you back on. I'm telling you what I love. What I would love to do.
Tom.
So the studio, Lux Media, the platform we're with, and we want to thank Lux Media. The studio should be open the middle of May on Rodeo Drive in Beverly Hills. Once that gets open, I would love to have you come out because you got some family out there too, and get you and Tom together on the podcast.
Oh my God, it's gonna be the big
my God, we've done this before. Well, let me tell you my favorite Tom story. It was talk about living under Chris's shadow. So I got an award from the Prism. It was called the Prism Award. It's they did real depictions in movies of substance abuse, and so they gave me this lifetime achievement award. It's not over yet, but so they had this big thing in the Beverly Hills Hotel, and so my brother Johnny and I went out there and we asked Tom to introduce to give us the award. So and it was really cool. It was the real deal, Hollywood event. And so we're in the green room afterwards, and all the press is there. And so Tom and Johnny and I are talking to this press, and this one guy starts getting real cocky and starts giving Tom about all this grief about Roseanne, and he's like, okay, Tom's reading really nice. Okay, that's great. And but he was getting really mad, and so the guy finally goes, all right, you can go away, go away. And so the press guy goes away, and he looked at Johnny and I, and he goes, Chris would have tackled that guy. And Johnny goes, really? He's the youngest. He's got to do it. He goes, really? And Tom goes, yeah. Johnny goes, So Johnny runs over and tackles the guy. And then Tom runs over and starts giving him noogies. And we beat the crap out of the guy. It was great.
Awesome. I love it.
Wait a minute. Was that the year that Steven, I presented and gave an award to Steven Tyler, I think, that year?
Oh, I don't know.
Larry Hagman was there.
Oh, it might have been the year after that.
Okay.
I remember that. The Hagman, yeah. He had just done a movie. Yeah. So no, I was sitting next to who was that? The Carradine brothers. It was kind of fun. That was kind of cool.
That's awesome. Well, we're gonna have you come out. We're gonna cause some sober chaos out in Beverly Hills in the LA area.
Chaos,
let's cause some chaos. We'll have fun.
We can do that.
Absolutely.
You're amazing. Thank you so much for coming on, and you are going to be back on
You're absolutely. We're going to have to come out to LA. Unfortunately, our time's up. We've got to end the show. I want to thank Lux Media. I want to thank Tom Farley for coming on and being transparent.
So transparent.
You're absolutely amazing. there's so much more for all of our journeys, and we're going to come together and be doing some cool things.
And anyone listening, just hang in there. If you need help, reach out to us. If we can get sober, anybody can.
The three of us
I
can
know
get
it takes some
sober.
work.
Well, as I say, that the hardest thing is making that decision. After that, it's a cakewalk. But it's that like, am I going to really do this? And once you push through that, there's people, there's the fellowship there. You're not alone, but you got to get through that. Got to make that decision. And it's
so true. I was telling this girl today on the phone when we were talking to her, I said, she doesn't want to admit that she's an alcoholic, but she's willing to try to look into it. And I said, honey, the game's over. Yes. Like, the game's over. Whether you want to try to say that you're not going to drink again or not, don't worry about that. Like, right now, you coming to terms with the fact that you're willing to do some work on yourself means that the game's over. So, like, the game, it's not, and it becomes a better game, a more fun game, actually. A game you get to participate in.
It's called a game called life, which is, as we know, can be taken like that, but you can also write your own chapters in your own story, however you want to live it. And you can pause and stop and redirect anytime you want. I did it. I leveled up. I married a supermodel, an actress, a badass. My life doesn't suck.
You over-mentioned that, by the way.
Tom Farley, we want to thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you.
This is Tim Ryan, Jennifer Jimenez signing off.
Love you guys. That's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye. We want to talk to you about Clean Cause, better caffeine. What's in the can? Our organic, sparkling Herba Mate is a premium pick-me-up that won't let you down. Every can of Clean Cause contains 160 milligrams of better caffeine, and each sip supports recovery from alcohol and drug addiction. 50% of the profits go to assist people into sober living. Check out cleancause.com.
Hope. At Rosecrance, it's more than a wish. Hope has power. As the proven behavioral health leader in the Midwest, no other program offers our depth of experience and hope here at Rosecrance. And when someone you love struggles with substance abuse and mental illness, hope plays an important part in recovery. Life's got bigger plans for you. We should know we're the most trusted name in treatment and the best choice for those who dare to hope. Visit us at rosecrance.org. Life's waiting.
Seaside Palm Beach is an executive luxury addiction treatment center located in Palm Beach, Florida. Our private clients come from all over the world, including business executives, professional athletes, celebrities, and more. Seaside Palm Beach offers first-class amenities and high-end accommodations, including a gourmet culinary experience, ocean views, pet-friendly facilities, and access to cell phones and laptops during your stay. If you or a loved one are struggling with addiction, please call us at 877-959-5053. Again, that number is 877-959-5053.
Now, glutathione is a big word, but it's the body's own master antioxidant. So it's a scavenger for free radicals, for bacteria, and what's relevant now, viruses. This is new to the marketplace. There's no other product on the market that has the ingredient NACET.
And basically NACET increases the production of that glutathione that is in our body already to strengthen and enhance our immune system and keep it strong. Elevated sense of well-being. Supports muscle strength and endurance. Cognitive function. Powerful liver support. Energy, helps blood sugar regulation, superior bioavailability of key ingredients.
One of your best defenses against COVID is a strong immune system. Taking GSH Plus as a daily supplement does all that. And now we have the product out on the marketplace.